Through engagement and professional development, this virtual panel seeks out those within F&A, state agencies, and the local area who are experiencing leadership success and are willing to share their journey to success. Today, we are joined by Chantel Jordan with Talent Management, who will serve as our moderator. And our panelists are first, Stephanie Dedmon, who's the Chief Information Officer for Strategic Technology Solutions, also known as STS. And secondly, Marvin Evans, who's an Enterprise Project Director Senior with STS and currently supporting the Department of Health as their Project Management Office Director. We do have a few housekeeping items for today's discussion, as you can see posted there. So we do ask that you stay on mute for the duration of this panel discussion. And if you have a problem with that, we will help you by muting you. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the panel. So as you come up with questions, please post them in the chat and we will get to as many as we can. Those we cannot get to, we'll follow back up with you, and we'll talk more about that at the end. Please look at the link that's in the chat around what the F&A Diversity Champions are all about. And we ask that you click on that link and visit our site to learn more about us. And lastly, there is the option now on Teams to use live captions. So if you click on the ellipsis or the three dots at the top right of the screen, you can select turn on live captions. So thank you. Thank all of you for being here with us today. And with that, I will now hand it over to Chantel.
Thank you, Lawrence. It is an absolute honor to have our guests with us today for this inaugural panel for our Journey to Success series that we've started. I just wanted to give just a little bit of information about the DC engagement team. So during a recent meeting, we discussed talent within F&A and realizing that there are over 2,000 state of Tennessee employees that work for the Department of Finance and Administration. We just want to reach out and get really more information about the talent that we have within our agency. Our employees are multi-generational. We know that they're multicultural and include a wide spectrum of abilities and talents. And so we do believe that it's important, and we want to support a culture that recognizes how people experience success. We want to engage with them, we want to hear from them, and we want to learn from them. So with that, I'm going to ask first Stephanie and then Marvin to take 1 or 2 minutes and just introduce yourself.
Great. Thank you, Chantel, and thank you for asking Marvin and I to be here today. We're very honored. So I am the State Chief Information Officer and over with STS, and as part of that role, responsible for managing our centralized team of IT resources of almost 1,200 strong in supporting our state agencies and just supporting the infrastructure, the shared solutions, business applications, basically strategic planning. So basically all things IT to enable our agencies and our customers to deliver services to our citizens. And very excited, very honored to be in that role and lead such a great team, and excited to be here today. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm Marvin Evans, and thank you, Stephanie. It is truly an honor to be here to speak with this team. As Lawrence said, I am a senior project director and supporting the Department of Health as its current PMO director. Prior to joining this team, I spent some years at the Department of Safety, where I first met Stephanie and David Thomas, and moved on to the Department of Treasury, and then ended up back. And prior to that, I spent 25 years with IBM. Initially working in the plant in Poughkeepsie, and believe it or not, I was doing software tools development. And looking back on it now, I was a BA, a PM, and production support person all at the same time. And then I found my way to the state when I went into a field job at IBM, because the data center was one of the places I did support. So wow. Life has full circles, and then also I am also a board member at the Matthew Walker Comprehensive Health Center. So that is me.
Thank you. In fact, I saw quite a bit of information in your bios, which we'll share out with the audience later, about how you give back by working on different organizations and with different areas in the community. And so I think that's awesome. And maybe you'll share a little bit about that later.
Sure.
What we want to move into now, we've kind of designed the panel so that you don't have to hear from me the whole time. We want to hear from the guest. So again, starting with Stephanie and then Marvin, and we'll continue in that way. I'd like you to spend some time talking about your current role in leading others.
So I would say as part of leading STS, my current role really involves a number of activities that are, first and foremost, I think about helping develop our culture within STS and making sure our employees understand, what are those things that are important to us to be successful, both as employees of STS, supporting each other, as well as meeting our customer needs. And I'm just a huge believer that, culture drives service. Culture drives employee engagement. It drives employee satisfaction. And so in that vein, I view my biggest responsibility as helping develop the culture at STS and promote it, while also listening to others, asking for feedback and being willing to hear that feedback and work to address it where possible. And so part of that is developing committees to work on different things. The diversity and inclusion committee that we have with STS is a prime example of that. And so I guess the other thing as we review the results of our employee engagement survey every 2 years and trying to measure where have we shown improvement and where do we still have room for growth, and then focusing on those areas. And so I think being a leader within our organization is about listening to our employees, listening to our customers, and then trying to do everything we can to address the opportunities for improvement, just to keep us moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay. Marvin?
Sure. A lot of that is exactly the same. Coming into the Department of Health, started out as a team member working on Verism, and then just through the course of things changing, and now you're the leader of the same team that you were once a member of. So as Stephanie said, you have to collaborate with that team, because you have to realize that the people that you work with, some of them can do the job as well or better than you can. So you have to take that input. They know at the end of the day that, yes, Marvin, you're the one that has to make the decisions, but I've always tried to keep an open door, let them come and discuss anything, no matter what it has to do with the business. And thus far, I think that has worked well, and I think I've gained their respect. And then when Brandon stepped in as the CIO, he had asked me to continue in that role. And the one thing that I do appreciate about Brandon is that he is the face of the organization, and he will let me state my case, plead my case, and then if I win him over, we'll go in my direction. If not, we do what he says and move forward. And so we try to do that throughout the organization. But then at the same time, for me and the people that I report to, I try to be extremely responsive to them. If they have an issue, we try to address it as soon as possible. If it's needed to escalate, we do that. And because we do a lot of good work, and that's one of the things I really appreciate by working with the state, that just about everything I've worked on in my almost 8 years, I can use that application also. So I bring that to work knowing, is this something that I would like to use? So, yeah.
Thank you. Both of you hit on some key things there. Open door, freedom to speak, to be heard, and then based on the decision that's made to put full support in that direction. And so thank you for that. Next, I want to move us to have you spend some time talking about the experiences of your journey to success. Just what are some key experiences that you feel help define your direction and the involvement that you have now with different groups in the community?
So I would say that for me, it's trying to balance the demands and expectations of the positions that I've been in with, of course, family responsibilities and family life, but also the community aspect of it and volunteering and then professional networking as well. It's always, or at least for me, I probably shouldn't speak in generalities, but for me, it's always sort of this balance. And sometimes you're giving a little more to one area, and then other times, depending on where you are in your life journey. But I guess I just wanted to say that I get a lot of benefit, or have gotten a lot of benefit from participating in organizations like the Project Management Institute and Women in Technology in Tennessee. Earlier in my career, I was involved with United Way and Habitat for Humanity. And now STS, we occasionally volunteer at the Second Harvest Food Bank. And so I guess I would encourage folks to think about those different areas of your life, with volunteerism, community, and then professional development or networking. You learn a lot from those organizations like Women in Technology and the National Technology Council. You learn a lot by being a member, just hearing from others, and sometimes it can be very accidental and not even scripted or part of an agenda, so to speak. But I think, and then I guess I would say, at this stage in my career, I want to give back. I want to, where I can, whether that's informal mentoring relationships or, community organizations. I think when you've been fortunate and blessed to serve in the roles that I have, I want to be able to give back to others and help develop both women and men, learn from some of my experiences. Does that cover what you're looking for? Is there anything in particular you'd say I'm missing?
Just I wouldn't say there's anything you're missing, but is there one or two experiences that have helped you help define kind of who you are today? One
or two experiences. I would say that this may come as a bit of a surprise to some of you. Early in my career, I was probably lacking a little bit of self-confidence, and really wondered, do I belong here? And this was when I was in the private sector, but even when I came to the state, I mean, you walk into a new situation and you realize that, there are people, as Marvin was saying, there are people around you, beside you, above you, behind you, that have more experience than you do in certain areas. But I guess one thing I've learned is if you think you can, you can. Mm-hmm. What's that quote, that you miss 100% of the shots that you never take?
Yes.
And so I think you just have to, I guess the specific experience, and I'll make this brief, is just when I went to work for a consulting company in the private sector, a lot of the folks in the Nashville office were from much bigger universities than I was. And Chantel, sorry, we were talking earlier about that I'm an alumni of Tennessee Tech, which is a smaller state school. And I overheard a conversation of two colleagues talking about that. Did you know there were people who work here that went to NTSU and Tennessee Tech? And my heart sank. But I thought, well, that's ridiculous. We both are in the same role. We have the same responsibility. I'm going to do this job, and I'm going to do it better than you are. And so it was just a good lesson of not to let other people define what you can do, and to set out, once you decide, and develop the appropriate amount of self-confidence that keeps you going. The sky's the limit.
Okay. That's a very timely message. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, Marvin, what about you?
Yeah, sometimes I think some of the things that helped define me when things didn't go as I thought they were going to go. Things like you thought maybe there's a job that you should have gotten at some point in time, like Stephanie, going into the private sector, an environment where you come from, you hear people coming from Yale, Harvard, U of M, and then you're just dropped into Poughkeepsie in the middle of nowhere. And it's not back then it really wasn't a training session. It's like you're in the deep end of the pool, start swimming. So what are you going to do? So all those things, I've taken things from all that and I brought that forward. And one thing that I've learned through my time in IBM was just really building your network of friends. And Stephanie may not remember this, but there was a time when I was trying to join BSD when I was still at safety, and an interview with her and Greg Turner. And I think it was about probably a couple of years ago that I realized it was Greg Turner in the interview at that time. And towards the end of the interview, we're wrapping the whole things up, and I was thanking them for their time. And I asked Stephanie if it was okay to continue to reach out to her for advice, counsel, and I basically told you stuck with me. And so we went back and forth a couple of times throughout my time at the state. And one time we really just sat down and we talked about, well, what do you want to do? And I told her exactly what I wanted to do. And she said, well, I don't have that right now. And I said, that's okay, I can wait. And as time went on, that happened, and she called. And I was in the middle of doing the Leadership Academy for Treasury. She said, well, I can't wait that long. I said, okay. And I was and I joined F&A, and I ended up working on the Verizon project at Health. And so my advice is just reach out, don't be afraid to talk to people, seek out that person who can give you good advice to guide you forward.
Okay, thank you. That is good advice, because sometimes there is that feeling or sense within state government sometimes that, oh, you can't approach this person or you shouldn't approach that person. So thank you for sharing that. The next area that we want to touch on is challenges, lessons that you've learned. So you've shared some good advice, but maybe share a few of the challenges that you met and how you perhaps overcome them and what you learned from them.
Wow, that's a good question. I would say a challenge that I experienced when we were actually implementing Edison, and that was I came to the state for that role to help lead the Edison implementation, and it was, it crossed a lot of functionality, a lot of areas, a lot of functionality, and I think we were having trouble getting some of the agencies to believe that we could actually do it. It was a little bit of a, well, this has been talked about for a while, and not sure you can really deliver. And we talked about it some on the team and just said, we're not here to not let this happen. We're here to succeed. So what do we need to do? What do we need? How do we need to change our approach? How do we need to change our messaging? And so, but I think the biggest thing that I've learned with that and taken forward is that, it's all about the relationships. And I, having been a little bit new to the state, I think there was some skepticism of, what does she know about our operations, and what does this? It wasn't just Stephanie, but what does this team understand about how we're different? Because we sometimes say that each agency is unique, and then sometimes we say they're very similar. So what I learned is take the time to develop the relationships, reach out to the people who are the naysayers. And you guys have probably heard this before. The best way to get somebody on board is to ask them to join you, to make them a part of the team, and to give them some stake in what you're trying to do, some responsibility. But I think I probably early on underestimated how much I needed to earn some, not so much trust, but belief that people would believe that we could get it done and that the project was going to succeed. Part of it was we were a team of very competitive people, and so we weren't going to not let it happen, not let it be successful. And so that was one challenge that I think, I guess what I learned from that is take a step back, assess what's really going on, because sometimes you jump to conclusions about why someone isn't joining you or someone isn't buying into what you're selling, so to speak. And so take some time to really understand, to go and talk and ask, what is it that you're not comfortable with? Why aren't you willing to get on board? I think when you make the time to go and meet with people and really ask them their perspective, the walls come down and they usually will communicate, and then you can kind of weed through what you thought you understood to really get at what is the issue and how do we address it.
Okay, that's really critical, because sometimes, we forget to have that positive intent. And so when you go to speak with people, they really appreciate that, I find. So, Marvin, what about you?
Well, some of the things that I've learned, my first assignment in IBM, my manager sat down with me, and what he said, I don't care how long you work. If you want to work an hour on Monday, 8 hours on Tuesday, work the weekend, it really doesn't matter. As long as the job gets done, that's fine. He said, all I need you to do is accomplish the task. If there's an issue, let me know. And so he's not blindsided in a meeting. And so what we found, that type of management style in the plant, you just had people just wanting to get the job done. And it's a lesson that they taught us in Leadership Academy. Just tell the people what you need and then let them do it. But you have to tell them what you want and how to do it. Then then maybe that's wrong style. So I've carried that forward, and so I tried to use that with my team, and just tell them what I need to have done and let them do it the way they think it needs to be done, as long as it's within all the TCA codes and we're not doing anything to end up on the carpet that we violated some rule. And for the most part, that has worked, and I think we have a high performing team in the current environment that we have right now. Yeah. Another lessons learned, and this is really from my experience at IBM. I was looking for a new challenge, and so I had one manager that wasn't ready to let me go, and so he held me back and just kept denying the request. And so what I learned from that is that you never want to hold your good people back. If your people have done a good job, people are going to seek them out. And so we always want to create an environment where our people can succeed. So if someone comes and even if one of my employees says, hey, look, I'm thinking about going in this direction with my career. And I've told them, I said, if you see something out there, and if you don't think you're quite ready for it, I said, apply for it, see if you can get an interview, understand what the job is. And so when it comes around and you're really ready, then you're positioned to get that job, and you never know. You may just end up getting it the first time, but we never hold people back. And that's one thing that I really try to do. Finding a good mentor. One of my the guys I met at IBM, met him in Detroit, and he just became a friend. And he was my friend, my vent partner, and just someone I always looked up to. And when IBM had the large reduction in force back in 2009, I think we reduced 15,000 that year, and I was in that number. And so that was at the time of the economic downturn. So the phone wasn't ringing very frequently, and it was the day I was frustrated. And so I called him just to vent with him what was going on, and he was the mirror for me. And so he was not going to tell me what I wanted to hear. He's going to tell me exactly what I needed to hear. And what he says, Marvin, you're not saying what they want to hear. So you need to just stop, go back, look at what you're presenting, and adjust that to what people want to hear, and you'll see it change. And he was right. And he is one of my best friends. And unfortunately, we lost him to COVID in November, so I miss him dearly. But he was one of my huge influences.
So with what you've shared, you both have mentioned mentors, and you've mentioned lessons that you've learned. Is there advice that you would give for people who are trying to be successful in a landscape where there's so many successful people? Standing out can be sometimes difficult if that is something that people want to do. But what would be one of the most important pieces of advice you could give to those who are wanting to be more successful in the technology space?
Marvin, do you want to go first? Do you want to keep?
Okay, I'll go first this time. For me, never be afraid to reach out to someone. What I've experienced with the team we have now, people in other agencies are reaching out to some of my PMs and BAs, just trying to understand what we do. And I think that's a credit to the team that Brandon has built since he's been there, that people are looking at us as a place where people want to come to. And so Adrian gets calls all the time, and I think he has mentored one or two people outside the agency since he's been here. So just never be afraid to reach out, because for us, I think our entire agency from an IT point of view is an open book. I don't think there's one person that you can't call that will be willing to help someone move their career forward.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
I would say too, as far as what are some thoughts on what you can do to kind of stand out in a group of successful people is to continue to ask for more. Excuse me, is to volunteer. Volunteer for those committees. Ask your supervisor and others. What else can I do? Is there something I can help you with that you need some extra arms and legs, an extra pair of arms and legs, and just look for those opportunities to be seen as a team player and a problem solver, because so often we sort of get tunnel vision on the job we're doing, but the best way to endear yourself personally and professionally is to help your boss shine and to take on additional things that will make that person successful. I think one of the most powerful questions you can ask your supervisor is, what else can I do for you? Because it forces that person to think about that question and whether there's an answer. Sometimes there's not. The answer is going to be, I'm good. No, I really can't think of anything. But when you ask, it does help a supervisor or a manager think, one, understand that you're willing to volunteer, and two, think through, are there particular things I need help with? And I've got this person sitting in front of me volunteering to be helpful. And then just always trying to be a problem solver and focus on what's the problem, what are the potential solutions, and how can I be involved in delivering on that solution.
And even to piggyback on what she says, what can you do to help your supervisor? The team I have working with me, they will tell you what you need to do to make this thing work better. They have ideas all the time, so they're coming out, this is what we need to do to move the PPM forward. I saw a chat question fly by that I really want to answer. It says, was there ever a position, job, role that you accepted but wish you turned it down as it really didn't align with your career aspirations? And yes, there was a case of that happened. And that was my last job in IBM, and I was in a staff role, and so you could see everything changing, and so you always wanted to be close to where revenue was being driven. And so one thing I never did in IBM, I never did the same job twice. I always did something different every 2, 3, 4 years. And so accepting this role was actually going back to do a job I had done before. And about 2 weeks into it, I'm going like, I have made a mistake, because this was really not aligning with what I wanted to do long term. And so it turns out, here comes the workforce, boom, and I got swept right out the door with that. Now, would have happened later is quite possible, because typically they went through some kind of workforce reduction every quarter. So it's something that you just live with. But that was definitely a job that I accepted that I wish I had passed on.
And man, that's interesting, because I know a lot of people have those types of questions about roles they've taken. So thank you for sharing that, because not everybody would be brave enough to share that they should have passed on something that they got. One of the things, before we get into the Q&A, which is coming up next, but You both touched on things that have a theme of service. So when you're talking about serving the workforce that you work with, and in what you do with the community, your work with different organizations, serving others, I found to be something that doesn't ever bring bad results. And so I'm wondering, do you correlate your success to your views about service and serving others at all?
Well, I do, because I think serving others gets you out of your own head and thinking about other people, which normally is a good thing. It makes you appreciate what you have. And so I just always find it, and admittedly, and I hope I'm answering the question as you intended, but some of those nights when we're going to go to Second Harvest and we're supposed to be there at 6 and we work until 8:30, all day I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got to go to Second Harvest. Mm-hmm. But 30 minutes into it, and certainly at the end of the evening, I'm like, this is wonderful. Why don't I do this more often? Because it just, well, first of all, the camaraderie and work with your team in and of itself is great, but then the fact that you're actually helping others, there's just something very rewarding isn't the right word, but something very helpful to your soul to be able to help others, and I think it makes you appreciate what you have.
That's good.
And I would have to second that. Even the last days in private sector, I guess about probably the last 2 or 3 years, I would go to work and I started asking myself, why am I here? Mm-hmm. What does the work I do daily matter? Mm-hmm. And so transitioning out of that to transition into state work, it's a work of service, because everything we do is there to help other people. And I've volunteered at Second Harvest Food Bank, and Stephanie's exactly right. You've worked a full day, and the last thing you want to do is go over there and do all that work. But once you get there, 30 minutes in, it's like, I had the same thought. I could do this more. I could do this every month if needed, if scheduled allowed. Volunteering at the Matthew Walker Comprehensive Health Center, working on the board, just trying to shape the direction that the center goes and what they bring to the community. If you go down a hallway in the center, they have these pictures of all these women who have been made up. And what I didn't know at the time, every last one of them was some type of cancer survivor. Oh, wow. And so yes, just being there and seeing the work that is done there, it just kind of lifts you. And so it also gives meaning when I come to work and I come to the Department of Health, knowing what we do. So it just makes the work I do now just so more fulfilling than what it was the first 25 years of my career.
It is nice to be able to come to work and be fulfilled. So that is definitely the case. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to check with Destiny and see. Destiny Brown has been monitoring our questions in the Q&A. And so I'm going to ask Destiny to take it from here and let us know if we've got any questions.
Yes, there have been a few questions, and so I'm going to jump around a little bit, but the first one we're going to ask is, who do you feel like has been most influential in your life or the leader you have become? And Stephanie or Marvin can answer first.
Wow. That is there's a very good question, and it's really hard for me to answer with just one. But if I had to pin it down, I would say the last boss that I had when I was with Accenture in the private sector, who is now still a very dear friend. She was a relatively new mother, as I was, and just was always very encouraging, very uplifting. She made time for me. She would let me have moments of, I just needed to vent and let it off my chest. But she wouldn't let me dwell there too long. She always knew the right point in time to say, okay, enough, now let's move forward. And over time, it was her gentle way of saying, you need to move through this pretty quickly and get on to what you're going to do about it, and not spend so much time in the complaining, wallowing phase. I just think she was a very down-to-earth, authentic person that cared about those around her, and it showed in all of her actions. So she's the person that comes to mind off the top of my head. I would also just add my mother, because my mother did not have a college degree and just worked her way up to be a very successful real estate agent. And she showed me that hard work and determination does pay off. And I would add her to the mix, though I think I've realized that much later in my life than I would have 25 years ago.
For me, pretty much, my friend Archie, he was definitely a huge influence. Besides just being a friend and mentor, he was also worked with the management team in IBM on the program on how they develop managers. So I got to sit at his feet, and he would just give me all this knowledge that I would just suck up and try to apply to jobs going forward. That's one. There was another one in the private sector, Ernie Clover. And we're still friends to this day. And he was one of those guys that I just need you to come to work. I'm going to watch your back. Anything coming, I got it. You concentrate on the work. And of course, in the private sector, those who've been there, there's always some kind of thing that happens, some kind of conflict. And there was a conflict. I'm coming back off vacation. Something happened. Words were exchanged. I'm mad. The other person's mad. My manager said, look, get on the plane. I got this. And he did. So that's one of those times I could come to work and just work and not have to worry about all the drama going on around me, because he had me covered. And I try to bring that forward with how I work with my team. I just want them to work and not worry about all the other stuff going on. So that's what I try to do.
Mm.
Thank you both so much for sharing that. The next question we have is, are there any shifts that you had to make in your leadership approach after joining the state?
Oh, that's good.
I would say I learned that you can't walk in and understand it all, and you need to take time to really listen to those around you before you make some bold statement that you have no business saying. So I guess in summary, I would say I learned to be a better listener and to invest some time before I made suggestions or ideas for consideration.
I second that. Be a really good listener, because people will tell you what they need, and your job as a leader is to help supply that. And as Stephanie says, you really need to listen before you make some bold statement. And because I've made my mistakes along the way, and so. And really never really be afraid to fail, because I actually learned the most when I've made a mistake. That's not to say go out and make a mistake all day, and because you're going to learn a lot from that. But for me, no one's ever going to get fired for making a bad decision if you learn from it and you make the improvement going forward. That's always what I call an opportunity to learn. So.
Agreed.
Thank you. Now, Marvin, you already answered this question because you got so excited. But Stephanie, if you'd like to take some time to answer this, was there ever a position or job role that you accepted but wish you turned it down as it really didn't align with your career aspirations?
Not really. The only story I would say is when I did out of college go to work for Accenture, I did the way Accenture brought most people in, and you were a programmer. Before you could become a great consultant, you needed to understand how to code and build systems. I don't regret taking that position, but about 2 years in, I did realize that maybe the people side of side of technology was more my strong suit, and so I was able to transition or transfer into a different part of the organization that was focused on organizational change management. Now, I value that early training. I wasn't particularly good at COBOL programming, and I don't mind admitting that. But I did learn from it, and I understand the building blocks, which does translate into the kinds of things that my team does today, and I have a great appreciation for.
Thank you, and I appreciate you both for answering that question. Honestly, that comes from that of reminding people that you don't always have to take every opportunity that's presented for you if it's not beneficial for where you're trying to go. This next question, I'm going to break up a little bit just because it seems rather long, and so I don't want to read it and become overwhelmed. But as leaders, do you see it as your responsibility to make the path easier for others, gender and racial minorities that follow in your footsteps? If so, what does that look like to you in practice?
I absolutely believe it is my responsibility. What is it? In practice, I think it looks like listening, and for us forming, being willing to form the Diversity and Inclusion Council, and being open to the feedback that council is bringing and is going to continue to bring. For us, that will be areas like recruiting. How do we increase our recruiting of diverse candidates, as well as removing unintentional bias from things like promotion and performance management and other areas. So it's a huge part of my responsibility, and something that I'm so glad that Lawrence and Todd Bartine came forward, Lawrence Sanders and Todd Bartine, because I was really, as a leader, knew that we needed to do something, not exactly sure what it looked like. So when, and I call that, I say that our Diversity and Inclusion Council was truly a grassroots, organically grown effort, for employees to come to me and say, we've got this idea, will you support it? And so it was easy to say, I absolutely support it, keep me involved, let's stay on the track together, but please own it and let me know what I can do to be helpful.
Yeah, you absolutely. It's almost a responsibility to reach back and help those succeed. I would certainly like to smooth the path for those who come behind me or who seek to do something different. And so for me, that would be success to see them exceed further than I have. And so that would be the ultimate for me, to see someone that I've helped along the way just achieve well past me.
Thank you all so much. Thank you also for taking that responsibility on, because that is what I like to think of as an invisible labor, that's not part of your pay, but it's something that you think that is very, very important. So thank you so much for taking that on and listening to those who will be following in your footsteps and training them to be more successful than what you identify as being success.
And I see a
also,
comment
I see in the chat.
I see a comment sliding by that said C++. That C++ was not my friend either. I just want to C#,
For a second, I
anything
thought y'all were
had
talking
C.
about grades.
Look, we survived it. That's all we can say. And I'm very grateful for the programmers, because that's not who I was going to be.
Next question that we have is, who's your favorite leadership author, speaker, guru? So I think of like Brene Brown or anyone like that. That's your favorite.
Some of you probably heard me say this, it's kind of an old school answer. I still like Stephen Covey and his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I really do. And I continue, I went through that training probably 20 years ago, maybe more, and it is still so relevant today. I can't say that I've read a lot of more recent stuff, but the other, there is a speaker that I'm hoping we can bring to either our IT community or FNA. Actually, he did speak at our Digital Government Summit when we had the last one in person, and that is Anthony Huey, who speaks on communication. And I think his speech to us at the Digital Government Summit was bringing the it factor to IT, which is kind of a funny play on words, but or a creative play on words there. But I have heard him 3 or 4 times, and he's just an energetic speaker on how to speak and things like if you're dealing with the press in challenging situations, how to redirect. And anyway, it's fascinating, and I haven't had a lot of, thankfully, because we have Lola Potter and she's awesome. I haven't had to practice a lot of that personally, but at any rate, Anthony Huey is someone who I think is a great speaker.
For me, my great speaker is Neil deGrasse Tyson. Just how he just takes astrophysics and breaks down and relates it to life. I could just sit and listen to him forever. If we could ever get him at a summit, that would be great. So that's the guy I love to listen to.
Now, I saved this question to follow that question is, what book are you currently reading?
So
if you have time to.
Yeah. I am not currently, well, it's not intended to be a leadership book, but I think it is shaping up to potentially have that, I had the opportunity week before last on vacation to go to the Grand Canyon. And so I ordered on the way home, which I probably should have done this before I went, but on the way home, I ordered from Amazon the history of the Grand Canyon. And so I've started reading it. And the reason why I think it applies to leadership, it is about the early settlers and, you know, working with the Indians and just the whole the history behind the Grand Canyon and how it became a national park as well, which there's certainly leadership lessons there as well. Like early in the book, but a different twist on leadership.
Well, Kelly Lancaster has me this executive leadership cohort. So the textbook is back there and I can't really read the title of it right now. So that's really what I'm reading right now because I'm in the midst of all that. But as soon as this class is over, I have a book over there by Lenny Kravitz, Let Love Rule. And so we're waiting to get to that one.
Thank you all so much. There's a question that says, you both come from different backgrounds, but you can each share some common attributes that have brought you together. My question is, what's your outlook for the future of diversity in the state?
What was that last part? You broke up just a little bit.
What is your outlook for the future of diversity in the state?
I think we have a ways to go. I think there's huge opportunity for us to improve, and touched on some of this, I mean, how we recruit and how we retain a diverse workforce. I'm optimistic. That's the good news. I think we have a lot of great people who are focused on it, both within STS and FNA. So I'm very optimistic, and I think we're all realizing we have to do it. We have to look at it and identify, to implement the opportunities for improvement. So I think the outlook is good, but I am realistic in that I think we have some miles to cover to get to where we feel better than we do today.
I am an eternal optimist, and I think the state is positioned to continue to grow in diversity, just knowing the amount of talent that I know we have in STS or over at Health. It's just the talent is waiting for the opportunity so they can shine. And so I think as long as we have leaders in place that want to earnestly and honestly address that, I think you'll see that happen.
Thank you both so much for your outlook on that topic. Next question I have is, do either of you have any suggestions for expanding one's career in direction that may appear far left or right from where you may be today? Since many of us are not C++ focused and life changes, any suggestions on pivoting would be great.
I think if there's an interest to consider something different, part of it is seeking out people, leaders, either senior leaders or mid-level leaders, to develop mentoring relationships with. And one thing about, I guess, part of the story that Marvin was telling earlier, and just about mentoring, I was just going to add, it is such an honor and very rewarding when someone comes to me and says, would you be willing to be my mentor? Now, when I say that, I'm not inviting 300 people to, and I don't mean to put my hands up either. I just want to share that it is, so if there's someone you're looking at and you really aspire to understand and to potentially learn from that person, do it. Just ask, because it is an honor when someone asks, for me anyway. But more to the question, I think just seeking out people who are in areas of interest and just informally learning from them, and then trying to understand what opportunities there may be. I mentioned relationships earlier. Everything we do professionally and personally is based on good relationships and how good your relationships are. And I think it was Stephen Covey that used to talk about the emotional bank account and making deposits, positive deposits in the emotional bank account with someone that you have a relationship with. And so I think that's part of pursuing potentially left or right pivots, is developing those relationships and learning what's out there, because you never know when an opportunity is going to arise. And if you've spent time with that person and they understand you might have an interest, they're going to remember that and potentially come back to you. To Marvin's point, I mean, it wasn't necessarily a shift right or left, but because he said to me, I want to work with this team, so you let me know when something comes up. I did, and here we are.
Yep. It happened just like that.
Right. Yeah.
For me, if it's something you want to make a career pivot, and if it's 180 degrees of what you're doing right now, for me, what I've always been told, put yourself around those people doing the things that you want to do. And so that's the best way to learn it. Then it comes back to the basics. Seek out someone doing that. Seek out a mentor. Learn all that you can learn if you want to make that career pivot. I had a friend that went through engineering school with me, fantastic mechanical engineer. Found out she loves to cook. She is now a caterer in Los Angeles. I was laying in bed one night. She does infomercials now. So she does infomercials, some little thing you roll on your face for women. She Velveeta, her and her husband do that all the time. She was on a show recently where she had to, Layla Ali redesigned a room for her husband in the house, but she got to demonstrate her cooking skills then. So she just said it was just time to pivot. She really wanted to do something that she loved. So she immersed herself in that and met the people that she needed to meet.
Thank you both so much. And then I have two more questions. One's the last one on success. What is success? How do you define success? There's so many different definitions, but what do you think success is?
I think that's an interesting question. I think success is when you really love what you do most of the time. There are difficult and challenging days for probably every person on the planet in their professional career. So if you're doing what you love, you enjoy the people you work with, and you feel like you're making a difference, that is success. Personally, I think success for an organization is when your customers are happy and they enjoy doing business with you.
I would probably second that also. Success for me is just helping others succeed in what they want to do, because I really enjoy seeing people succeed. And so if I can play a part in that, that just really makes my day. Stephanie's right. There are days that there are days we don't want to get up and come to work. We're just human. But what I can tell you, the difference between my private sector and working with the state, private sector, some days I just really did not want to go in there. Here at the state, once I get into the office and start the workday, just got boom, it clicks and I'm happy. And that's just a difference of being of service.
Thank you both so much. Last question, we're going to end on a little fun note. Or what are some of the songs on your playlist?
Well, let's look.
Do I have a eclectic? Well, I think it's eclectic. I have a playlist that I create for exercising. So I have Queen, the Rolling Stones, Stevie Wonder, and ABBA.
Mine is probably just as crazy, because mine will change. I'll hear something on the radio and I'll Shazam it, and then it goes into a playlist. So right now I have Brian Culberson is Go Live from the Inside, Dave Koz, Elton John, Dua Lipa, some Prince, Barry White, Earth, Wind and Fire, soundtrack from Hamilton. I'm sorry, so I still listen to that too. So.
There's
Right.
never a time limit for the soundtrack of Hamilton.
Yeah, I was gonna say, don't apologize.
Thank you both so much. At this moment, I'm going to turn it back over to Lauren Sanders to close us out.
All right. Stephanie and Marvin, on behalf of the F&A Diversity Champions Engagement Team, thank you for taking time from your busy schedules to serve as guest panelists for our very first panel discussion on the journey to success. Your presence and wise words have helped magnify our mission in the best possible way. Also, thank you to Destiny Brown for manning the QA and for today's setup, and Chantel Jordan for moderating. If there are additional questions, we will share them with the speakers. Once we have responses, we will provide the additional questions with responses as a handout that can be shared with the recording. So check out the link in the chat, and also we have a survey, so check out the link in the chat for the survey. Again, we appreciate your feedback. An evaluation for the presentation is included in your registration package. Interested in sharing your journey to success? If you are interested or would like to suggest a guest, please contact me, Lawrence Sanders, Destiny Brown, or Chantel Jordan. Diversity Champions Engagement is committed to being an ongoing source of information, resources, and networking for F&A employees. Thank you again to our speakers and our moderator, and this concludes today's presentation. Stay well and safe, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was fun.
Bye. Yay.